Well, the Master Jesus is absolutely unique persona, if I can use the word persona, personality, being, intelligence, I think resonates with people of all traditions. I mean, I was raised in an Orthodox Christian tradition. I'm no longer in the Orthodox tradition. But I think people of many faiths respect, revere this Master. People seem to instinctively know. It could be, in my case and others, that we have followed him, either personally or maybe hundreds of years after his resurrection, but the path that he left, and therefore we have a connection with him, which we're born with. And the problem that's come in there is there have been so many false ideas of this Master and what he is, especially the idea that he was the one and only Son of God, which is preposterous, really,
Yes.
as a claim. In fact, he's a very, very great Master. He came from Venus, the Brighton morning star. It's referred to in the book of Revelation by St. John. And he is very important, to answer your question, in this day and age. He's given some of the greatest teachings and one of the greatest practices ever given, for example, which I'll be talking about, we'll be explaining, people can do in their own lives, and if they do, it will change them.
You touched on a very important point as well, because during this service we're going to be busting a lot of the myths around Jesus as well, a lot of the dogmas, to reveal more of the truth. And so leads me on to the next question, which is, what does Jesus actually mean to you personally?
Well, to me, I would go so far as to say that the very existence of what I perceive and what I recognize about that intelligence is proof of divinity to me. The fact that such a being of such love, of such wisdom, of such brilliance, and I'm lucky because Dr. George King, who founded the Aetherius Society, who I knew very well, has explained his mission in a way it's never been explained before. And so to add to those qualities, great strategy, total sacrifice, the fact that that intelligence even existed in what we know, and the other thing, we're going to play an extract of his voice as transmitted through Dr. King's mediumship, and people have heard that voice, they've heard recordings of it and recognized him from that voice without even being told that it was him. There's something about him, some indefinable quality maybe, that to me personally means God exists.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. The Master Jesus has given many different prayers to help us as well, to help us to help other people and to help ourselves as well. So I'm just wondering, would you be kind enough to share one of these prayers with our audience that they can possibly join in with?
Indeed. I mean, but just before I do, I'd say that Jesus in his mission 2,000 years ago was really way ahead of his time, because then he was teaching the path of today. It's been enlarged today as we go into the New Age period. It's been expanded upon, including by him in this practice, the 12 blessings. But he was then talking about service, love as the way, and not just personal inner development of ourselves.
Sure, sure.
Yes, I'd love to give a prayer. It's a very simple prayer. It's in one of the blessings, the third blessing, for they who love. And I should say that Jesus is perhaps the ultimate exponent of love, true love. It's a word that's used to mean so many things.
Sure.
And this prayer is very short, very simple, and people can join in. It's simply this: Almighty God, who is the creator of all things, we pray that your light may shine through us all, so that we may transmit this unto the world. And to do that, I would suggest people, if they want to join in now, remove rings, remove watches.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that, because they impede the flow of natural energy. I mean, Master Jesus was a great master. You might call him a master of yoga. And he understood the flow of prana or chi, and this is the force which directs the love energy. So we raise our hands like this, and we join in together. Almighty God, who is the creator of all things, we pray that your light may shine through us all, so that we may transmit this unto the world. And then when we finished, we simply pass one palm across the other to stop the flow of energy.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Richard.
It's an amazing thing that for thousands of years it is now, of course, people have pondered over the reason for Jesus coming to earth and the reason that he died, because it's becoming ever clearer that he deliberately brought about his death. If you behaved in the way he did over that period, over the Passover, under Roman rule, breaking the rules, breaking the temple rules, you're going to get caught, you're going to be in trouble, and he knew it.
Sure.
And so he engineered this. And of course, afterwards, it was very, very difficult for his followers to continue the tradition. In fact, there was a difficult period, according to history, just after. And it was St. Peter who, as it were, picked up the baton and said, right, now we must rally and we must move, and then others, of course, St. Paul notably, and others. And they really got going. And they built the church, which, to put it mildly, has gone off the rails, but still, they did do that. But the question remains, why? And we get these odd explanations like the forgiveness of sins, which really doesn't have great meaning and doesn't make any sense, really. And it's not true, because you can't unwash yourself of sins. You can work yourself out of them. That's basic karma. And then Dr. King, to the best of my knowledge, is the first person, Dr. George King, founder of the Aetherius Society, my master, your master, was the first one to really tie it down in a very simple, very understandable way and say exactly what he did, which was to avert a catastrophe that was due in those days by taking karma.
It's interesting when you read the Bible, and then you study Dr. King's perception of Jesus, his unique perception, his unique depth of understanding and intimate contact with Jesus as well. It just rings so true.
Yeah.
It just cuts through a lot of the dogma, it cuts through a lot of the misinterpretations that have been passed down throughout the thousands of years and of the Bible and the works and the words of Jesus, to really reveal the truth. And it's amazing. And
it was obviously engineered, and in particular, I think two of the disciples have been maligned. One possibly in a terrible way, namely Judas, who I don't know that he did, but it seems to me very likely, even based on the story. We're even told that at the Last Supper, Jesus said, one of you will now leave who's going to betray me. I mean, it was obviously an instruction. It wasn't like he slipped out. And he was working under orders. He was necessary to identify Jesus, which indicates that he wasn't that famous. They needed to have him identified. History gives a whole different... The church has put it over that, he's this massive figure. He had a tiny following. And from my understanding, the 12 disciples were pretty much the only ones who had the guts and were willing to go with him to his certain death and risk their lives. And then the other one who's been maligned, I believe, is St. Peter, who's always portrayed as a flawed, very human individual. And yet, in fact, he was the one who saved the day, really. He came back and picked it up and explained it, and others then helped him and followed him. And of course, the story that he betrayed his master and so on is ludicrous. Here's someone who... You have two stories. One, that he was willing to cut off the ear of a centurion, which would be absolutely fatal move in those days. And the other, that he was betraying out of fear. And of course that too was essential, or he would have also been captured and then his mission wouldn't have gone ahead, and who knows, there might not have even been a movement at all without St. Peter.
Sure, that's amazing. And I also understand that Jesus lived for many hundreds of years after he passed, or after he died, after he was crucified. And can you share a little bit about what he did, or what you're aware of, or what he did after?
Well, he stayed on earth. I mean, he his resurrection was a demonstration, if you like, of an initiation which we will all go through, which certain masters have gone through. Just to name perhaps one of the most famous, Count Saint-Germain,
sure.
who lived for hundreds of years, according to French history, in the same body. And so after the resurrection, he stayed, I believe, for some 600 or 700 years around the earth in that ascended body, you might call it. He was seen, he's reported, I believe, in the Americas and certainly in India, Tibet. The book of Revelation, which is the last book in the Bible, I think people have different views, but I think scholars are putting that at about 100 years, sure. AD maybe. And there, that's where he made the statement, I may have it slightly wrong, but I am an offspring of the root of David and the bright and morning star. In other words, I had my physical, what we would call basic body, it was of Jewish origin, but I am actually from Venus.
Amazing, amazing.
And that would have been said, it was said through an angel, according to the book of Revelation, and possibly, maybe directly, by Jesus to St. John, who was not the St. John disciple, by the way, another St. John who wrote the book of Revelation.
Wow, amazing. So there's a lot more to be discovered about Jesus than is written in the Bible.
Massive. He was a careful, cunning, not a word people associate with Jesus. I mean, for example, he decided to fulfill certain biblical prophecies from the Old Testament, and one involved riding into Jerusalem on I think a young donkey, something. And he went out of his way to procure, or sent one of his disciples to get hold of the donkey that he actually rode in on. A deliberate move. Every move was planned. He knew exactly what would happen, and he made it happen.
Yeah.
But as I say, Dr. King comes along 2,000 years later, someone who knew the Master Jesus very, very well indeed, and explains exactly what it was all about. I think for the first time,
sure.
Namely to avert a catastrophe, a devastating catastrophe that would have affected civilization that was due in those days.
And I think Dr. King also referred to Jesus as being one of the greatest actors.
Oh yeah,
or if not the greatest actor of all time, you know, and with all that he did, so that kind of fits in. And
he was an actor, and this some people won't like, but he was a politician. He had to be.
Yes.
Politics being the art of the possible.
Sure, sure.
According to, I don't know who said that, was it Voltaire? Somebody said that. But sure. I mean, he knew what to say. So and there's a couple of good examples in the Bible of that. One where he was, they tried to trap him on 2 occasions at least, and one was, the famous one, should we pay our taxes and give unto Caesar what is Caesar?
Sure.
To which Dr. King added, give unto Caesar what Caesar thinks is Caesar's. And then there was the other one with the adulteress, and they were trying to trap him, because the Jewish law said stone adulteresses to death, and if he had disagreed with that, he would have been guilty of breaking Jewish law, which could have got him into trouble, which is what they wanted, the people who asked him, should we stone this adulteress? Sure. And he said, that he is without sin cast the first stone. Outstanding.
It's a brilliant response.
As well as a teaching,
yeah.
It's a political, if you like, response to a political trap, which he recognised immediately. I mean, so he's not the sort of innocent, and some reports, we don't know how accurate they are, I think from Roman sources, indicate that he was quite austere and almost frightening in his demeanour at times.